it's great to be here. This is 12 months on since the last time we talked about Amazon. If everybody remembers back to 12 months ago, you know, we did the presentation, and it was you know, sad times for Australian retailer. That's what was predicted. It was the retail apocalypse was predicted. You know, things like, you know, JB Hi-Fi was expected to go under. You know, articles in the paper, you know, Amazon is coming, are you ready, etc. And we came out and we did this presentation, and we said, well, look, Amazon's got a pretty strong history of following a methodical rollout plan. We actually don't think the first year is going to be a big bang, you know, but it is going to raise the bar for Australian retailers. In effect, that is, I think, what, you know, we've seen prove out for the most part. We've seen you know, quite a growth in e-commerce volume overall. The offers that are out that Australian retailers are providing are much better. But at the same time, you know, there's been a lot of disappointment around, you know, the offer that Amazon has provided in the first instance, mostly because of, you know, externally set expectations rather than you know, their own, you know, putting out a standard or objective. So what we're going to talk about today is do a little bit of a recap of, you know, what's happened over the last 12 months. We're going to talk a little bit about, you know, what are winning retailers doing now in Australia and overseas. You know, what are some different winning strategies for dealing with Amazon and the other marketplace platform players, and then we'll, you know, make some bold predictions for what we're going to be talking about in another 12 months' time. So my name's I forgot to introduce myself, which is very rude. I was busy picking on English soccer fans. My name's Lauren Nive. Kate Hart and my colleague Yu Kao are going to be presenting with me today.
Beautiful. So as Laura said, my name is Kate Hart. I'm a director in the Melbourne practice, working predominantly on supply chain, procurement, strategy. I've been working exclusively with retail over the last few years, so this is clearly a topic that's very near and dear to many of my clients' hearts and is something that I'm very passionate about. Today, obviously great turnout, much better than Sydney, so we've got a lot of interested online shoppers or people from retail, so really hoping that today can be an engaging conversation. So throughout the session, please provide your insights, your anecdotes, any reflections, so we can have an interesting conversation on something that is pretty fascinating within the Australian retail landscape. So in that vein, we are going to kick off with a poll. So everyone in this room is a consumer of some description, so I'll hand over to you, to run you through the poll.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kao. I'm a manager from the Melbourne office. I'm part of the consumer goods and retail practice, and recently I've been working a lot on e-commerce and especially cross-border e-commerce. So for all of you on the poll, so everyone should get a piece of paper like this with the instructions of the poll. So there are two ways to participate. One is via internet, and the other one is with mobile. Whichever way you want, it's fine. So internet, you just need to type in the Safari, the www.atkvote.com, and then log in with a code capital IIA, so that you can access to the questions. And when we run the slides, we will say the questions, and we will have options. You can press on the button to vote to put the answers relevant for you. And the other way is to do it with mobile. You can text to the number 0477 765 057, and then type. This one is a tricky one. So IIA space and anything of your choice. So for example, you can type IIA space B or IIA space C, whatever you want. Is it clear? Okay, cool. So just a few questions about your online shopping behavior. So the first question, what categories do you typically purchase online? You can buy, or you can select one or more options relevant for you. So A is clothing, footwear, and apparel. B is books, music and media. C, electronics and appliances. D, health and beauty. E, grocery. F, none, you don't do any. Ready?
Whoa, hold on. Much better participation rate than in Sydney, I'll note.
Right. And you're from Sydney. So
I know. I feel like I'm an unbiased judge.
That's good.
All right.
So everybody's done? No.
Yeah. Okay.
Good? Are we going to hit the 150?
No, just go.
Cool. So you can see that the top three products people are buying, one, clothing, footwear, and apparel, B, books, C, electronics and appliances. I can tell you that nationwide, the top three products bought by Australian consumers are electronics, apparel, and books. So it's a small room, but very representative sample. Health and beauty. The national online penetration average is actually 7.3% last year. So this is very close. And actually, we also saw quite some impressive growth during the past years, past months. Health and beauty and cosmetics saw 29.4% last year growth. And we're actually thinking this will be the category which will see the disruption point in the next year or even next few months. Groceries, more people are doing this online than national average. National average online penetration rate is 3%. But definitely some interesting trends happening. And estimation goes that next year, up to 20% of Australian households are going to do at least once their grocery online. So definitely some interesting trends going on here. Next question. Have you purchased from Amazon.com.au? So the Australian side, not the US side. A is yes, B is yes and as a Prime member. C is no.
Good. Good. Let's move things along.
You can say that during the past 6 months, they've done like an okay job in attracting new customers to their website. The national average is about 1 in 3 Australians that have shopped on their Australian website. So it's quite close to what we see here. And given that Prime is still a quite new offering, I think its value for consumers is yet to be demonstrated. Question number 3. What was your key driver for purchasing from Amazon.com.au? So the key driver, you can choose one. A is price, B is range, C is delivery time / convenience, D is other.
Interesting.
Interesting. So price is still the main driver. So I'm quite interested. So who put price, and could you tell tell us a little bit more for what product you shop on Amazon website for price? An example? Yes?
I just moved house, so I bought a bunch of kitchen appliances on there straight away.
Mm.
Just looked at all of them.
Kitchen appliances. It's better price than kitchen appliances offline and on other websites.
Mm.
It's very interesting. Good. Anything, anyone else? Yeah, so actually we found that Amazon, they've been working on that price and they've been working on that range and delivery time. Since the launch, the range and delivery time was not very satisfactory, but we would definitely expect that improving in the next few months. Last question. Are you or do you plan to become an Amazon Prime member in the next 12 months? A, yes, B, no.
Ah.
Actually, this is higher than Sydney. In Sydney, we got like one quarter of people who said yes. So, actually, the estimation for the nationwide average is next year maybe 1/4 of Australian shoppers will become Prime member. It's still early days for Amazon in Australia, but they're playing a longer term here. They plan to lay the foundation to mirror the success in the US, and once that is done, there are very strong bonds with their customers, and that will be a very powerful weapon for them. Thank you very much for your participation, and I will just hand over to my colleague Lauren to walk you through the presentation.
Good, thank you. So, so good. So now we've got a good sense that for the most part, this is a representative sample, right? It's fairly consistent with what we see, the trends more broadly in the market in terms of both uptake, use of e-commerce, as well as the uptake of Prime. So now what we want to do is just talk about why is this important? Why are we talking about Amazon? So importantly, and this is the case, why there was so much hype 12 months ago, and why it's still important now. If you look at e-commerce in the U.S., that the U.S. is really has effectively led e-commerce and e-commerce innovation since the mid-90s. Everybody knows the story of Amazon. I think one of the some of the more interesting parts for this and analogies for this market is that Amazon accounted for 40% of every e-commerce dollar spent in the U.S. in 2017. It's just a massive level of dominance that they've got in the e-commerce market there. The other part of it is that e-commerce is the driver of retail growth. It makes up the vast majority of growth in retail in that market. And so, to be the dominant part of the dominant growth engine of retail, it's really important. And it's important that we understand, as people who either are consumers or practitioners in the retail and consumer products industry, it's important that we understand, well, what's the implication for Australia? The other thing, as you alluded to, the expectation is that Amazon Prime membership is going to be, more than half of households in the U.S. are going to be Prime members by 2020, maybe even before that. That's important because it becomes a default, right? Because of the range, the assortment. Consumers, have, for all manner of reasons, be it, some of the streaming offers or the various offers that Amazon Prime has, you prepay for all of your shipping. It becomes the default, the first stopping point. The other part of it is from a review standpoint. I mean, I can't remember the statistic right now, but it's over 50% of U.S. e-commerce shopping transactions actually start on Amazon for the reviews. It's a trusted site, it's a trusted kind of host of product reviews, and so by having that, it becomes an access point for the consumer for e-commerce. And so thinking about that, obviously, Australian e-commerce is I think something about 9% penetration, something like that. The U.S. it's 14, 15, and so it's growing quite double digits in Australia. So it's important to understand where are we going. A few other comparisons. So we've talked about the U.S. case. Important to talk about. Well, we talked about the playbook. Right, the launch playbook as you go through, as Amazon enters a country, and also starts to drive other e-commerce players and drive the competitive environment in the market. And look, the standard playbook is starting with digital media, moving towards electronics, health and beauty, fashion, then starting to get into food, some prescription perhaps. Before then, more at the end, or much farther along, getting into fresh and that cold chain related product. Importantly, 12 months ago, what we said is Amazon will follow the similar playbook that will set a benchmark, or even the threat of it will set a standard for retailers in Australia. But it will be accelerated versus other markets. And I think we've basically seen that come to pass. One outlier here, we quite often use Canada as a comparison site, particularly when we're talking about supply chain, similar population, similar geographic issues. It is a bit of an outlier because Amazon.ca, Amazon.com, there's a lot of kind of cannibalization that goes between those two. So I'd say the share here is probably not as representative as it could be, but the sequence of launch is important here. Not going to spend a heap of time on this, but it's important to call out, what are the areas that, what are the capabilities that Amazon brings? Because again, that starts to talk to, well, what are retailers competing with? Obviously, the service and loyalty program, be that via streaming offers, be that via prepaid shipping, et cetera, is important. Experience in technology, both in terms of customer experience, so the ease of the customer experience, the ease of tracking of shipments, the consolidation, but also the analytics that sits behind it is important. That focus on developing third-party access to the marketplace platform and developing third parties, that provides effectively assortment leverage, right? You get others to list on your marketplace. It again reinforces the fact that it's a one-stop shop for the consumer. That's a place to start for any purchase decision. Experimentation and innovation. We won't say the drone word, but I'm sure Kate will talk about it. Supply chain performance, obviously, the big area of innovation here has been within, both from a technology and system standpoint, but as well as within their distribution centers and also partnerships with last mile providers. And then finally, the big one is around assortment. And so basically, what we're saying is it's that all of these capabilities are pushing the Australian retail industry and setting a new standard. So what's been happening over the last 12 months, Kate?
All right, well, where were you on the 7th of December last year? Were you sitting at your computer or on the couch, mouse at the ready, prepared to log on to amazon.com.au and buy your mother-in-law that amazing Christmas present? If you were, well then you were also potentially subscribed to the hype that surrounded the Amazon launch. There was, Lauren has talked a little bit about the hype. There was a lot of media coverage about it was going to be an apocalypse for Australian retail and utopia for Australian consumers. Clearly none of that eventuated. The people that were most keenly disappointed by the launch were those that have experienced Amazon through other websites. So the range, the price was not what was anticipated in the hype. Some of the articles, prices were too high and the product range disappointing. Amazon then a counter. Amazon is not going to kill Australian retail, at least not today. So there was a lot of hype, and if you subscribe to the hype, then yes, it was underwhelming. But it wasn't surprising. So Amazon did follow the playbook. So they launched with 23 categories, which is slightly more than what we've seen in similar demographics or similar geographies, sorry. But it was the books, it was the sporting goods, etc. There has been some price compression. So in those categories that were released initially, there's been about a 10 to 14% price compression for things like sporting goods, electronics, etc. So there has been some benefits, and that will continue to evolve. But it was underwhelming, it wasn't surprising, and it certainly has not reached steady state. So we've been updating this slide even as of the 1st of July with the announcement of the geo-blocking. For those of you who are Prime members, that's pretty recent, right? That was mid-June. I think 19th of June, Amazon launched their Prime offering. So the landscape is going to continue to evolve, continue to change, and Amazon have got a very deliberate approach to rolling out their offer within the Australian retail landscape. So there was hype. This graph on the left talks about relative search intensity. So that's how many times Amazon was entered into the Google search bar. So you can see Amazon Australia is this white line, so significant peak in consumer interest around the launch time. Interest has subsided post-launch but still slightly elevated to pre-launch levels. You can see these are the Woolworths and Coles, so they're trending upwards and some significant spikes once again over Christmas, and then potentially as a result of other promotional activity through the year. The interesting one is the top line, which is eBay. So they are declining in consumer interest. The analogy that I've sort of read is that eBay today is what Nokia was in 2005. So we'll see how that story plays out. On the right is, so Amazon have been very deliberate as to how they've rolled out, but they have been hugely successful. So e-commerce in Australia since the Amazon launch has increased by 9.1%. Amazon traffic through Amazon's website is growing by 1.5 million visits per month. So significant interest, significant growth, and they're now established as second only to eBay so far as the monthly traffic. And this is as of May this year. So they have been successful, and they will continue to attract more and more e-commerce. Other Australian retailers have benefited through this growth of e-commerce, but only if they've got a valid e-commerce offering. Companies like Cotton On, etc., have suffered. So the importance of having an e-commerce platform is vital for Australian retailers.
Good. So one of the things that we talked about, I want to talk a little bit about the delivery offer. When we talked about this last time, we made that statement that said, look, the entry or the threat of entry of Amazon is actually going to push retailers locally to improve their offer. And some larrikin at the back shouted, "What offers?" And basically implying that the e-commerce if you think about 12 months ago, the e-commerce landscape was totally different. I mean, it changed. You kind of get used to it because it's incremental. But it was very different. I mean, we were very excited about same-day delivery by the likes of Iconic, but very few others were doing that. Very few free delivery offers, and most of them had minimum spends that were reasonably significant, particularly around the main retailers. You fast forward to today, and actually what has happened is arguably local retailers offer better delivery offers and service than Amazon does. Amazon Prime is a 2-day service for free delivery on select products, which is so that's great. The issue is local stocking in Melbourne only, so inability to stock and do quicker turnaround times in other metro areas. That's going to change. But if you look at the the offers around Shipster, very inexpensive offer through Australia Post, And actually, some very big retailers that are signed up to it for free delivery. Same thing with Booktopia, next day delivery. We've got lots of quite a number of same day delivery offers now that we didn't have before. We've also got evening delivery services that are coming very quickly. And a lot of this builds on, there's actually quite a lot of capacity, sortation capacity that was built out over the past couple of 3 years across Australia. And now, so that, those were big investments by the parcel companies. And those investments, I think, are starting to get utilized, if not fully pay off. But they're certainly paying off from a consumer perspective in terms of the offers that are available in the Australian market. So what's going to happen over the next 6 to 12 months? Again, Amazon is, the expectation is Sydney DC is going to launch in the next 6 months, second half of 2018. That is going to mean that they're going to be able to make offers, Sydney, Melbourne Metro, much shorter delivery times. That's going to basically raise the bar again in those metro areas. Global access, again, if everybody's kind of, maybe not like me, but I've gone on and I certainly do a lot of searching for esoteric, outdoor goods and things like that. Those are not available on the Amazon Global Marketplace yet, much to my disappointment. However, the geo-blocking risk or that threat, that issue that everybody thought was going to be, just a debacle, actually hasn't turned out to be. If I think about, I was actually quite negative on the range in June. I was looking for men's shoes. Kate likes to talk about how I look at this whole thing through my own wardrobe. And I was looking at men's shoes, through Oxford, number of Australian companies. There's great offers, right, on men's shoes. I went onto Amazon. If I wanted a pair of Crocs, I was in good shape. If I didn't want a pair of Crocs, I was actually going to struggle. And that was at the end of June. Fast forward a couple of weeks, it's completely changed. Actually, there's quite a broad selection. And so this issue is much less of an issue than feared, and actually it's going to become it's actually becoming a real point of capability for Amazon that because it does provide access to that massive global assortment that it has access to. Price and range, we'll talk a little bit about that, but it's quite interesting. In specific categories, there are some great pricing. In other categories and other products, you have to be very careful. There's a number of things, particularly in those more sparsely populated categories that paying well outside of what is the local price is possible. I actually have to think that that's partially due to just it's very new, right? The last 3 weeks, pricing algorithms have not caught up. And don't have the data to really reflect the current market conditions on so many new products. So what I'm seeing is that pricing is actually all kind of coming into line and then starting to become competitive. Subscription services, so we expect that the Prime offer is going to improve. Right now, it's 2 business days for select products. With the launch of new DCs, the expectation is that's gonna become same, next day or same day, and again, so it's just gonna raise the bar, and so Australian retailers need to think about, well, how do we use the marketplace platforms, but also how do we compete? And so there's a number of different ways that Australian players can work with and against Amazon, and we want to talk about that next.
Thank you. So we see that there's three main approaches or strategic options for retailers in this brave new Amazonian world in Australia. So firstly is to embrace the marketplace platform. So there's different approaches that retailers can take. They can sell to Amazon, they can establish a presence on Amazon Marketplace, they can also choose to be fulfilled by Amazon. So there's a number of approaches that can be taken, all with different costs and benefits, trade-offs such as a loss of control, increased fees, but a pros such as lower cost of customer acquisition and exposure to a broader customer base. So there's some very deliberate choices that need to be made in regards to how you could embrace the marketplace platform offering. Secondly is a consumer target segment specialist. This is a retailer who has the specific target segment front and centre of everything they do. I think IKEA is a really great example of this. We'll talk a little bit more about T2, but IKEA is firmly focused on the growing middle class. In China alone, middle class, 250,000 people a day are officially becoming middle class. So that is a consumer segment which is growing and will continue to grow as we see economic developments, particularly in India and China. The third one is a product category specialist. So this is a retailer who dominates a category or a few categories. I think in Australia, BCF is a really good example for this. Maybe wrong audience, I did a little bit of sampling last night within the office as to how many fishing aficionados there were. There weren't many within the consulting ranks. However, if you are in Queensland, BCF is the go-to destination for anything to do with boating, camping and fishing. They have got this die-hard following of fishing loyalists who love the boating, camping, fishing brand, who go there for advice on lures and rods and all things fishing and boating. Camping, arguably there is a little bit more competition, but definitely for boating, camping, they are well and truly dominating that particular product category.
I have a question on putting Kmart in under customer target segment specialist. If Amazon's key competitive advantage is price and range, how do you see subsidiaries of Wesfarmers and Woolworths partnering with Amazon to help them be more competitive?
Yep, that's a really great question. We might go through, as we talk through each of these strategic options, cover some elements of that.
Is that that's huge?
It is huge. Yeah, agreed. All right, shall we go to the next slide?
So this is the partnering. This is in fact the partnering question. So you've got this platform that exists in Amazon. You can, as a retailer, you can either use it or you can compete with it. And there's a number of different strategies. And so, if you look at what we've kind of done is said, what is the customer value proposition of Amazon in effect to customers, to consumers, and then how does that translate and how is that used by potential sellers, either to their benefit or in some cases to their potential detriment. So Blow's Clothing. Blow's Clothing. Who knows Blow's Clothing? I would expect nobody. Oh, excellent, excellent. So Blow's Clothing is established in 1936 and a third-generation Australian clothing retailer. Very small. They, interestingly, how we came across Blow's Clothing.
When we were going through Lauren's wardrobe.
Yes, that's right. Just to be clear. Interestingly, so we were thinking about some of these Australian Australian brands, iconic Australian brands. We were thinking about R.M. Williams. I thought, oh, interesting. So R.M. Williams, are they on Amazon? Oh, it turns out you can buy Craftsman boots. That is surprising, very surprising, in fact. And you dig into it. Oh, it's actually this one seller. It's Blow's Clothing. Well, that's very interesting. $475 for a pair of Craftsman boots. Certain sizes, not all sizes, select range. Interesting. Let me compare that on the R.M. Williams site. Oh, over $500. Isn't this fascinating? And so, from the Blow's Clothing perspective, not a big e-commerce player up until now. However, what have they done? for very, effectively $49 a month is the seller fee to get access to the Amazon Marketplace. What have they done? They've actually got access to the 11 million website visits a month that are happening on the Amazon site for very, very inexpensive. They're listing to that audience. They've got a niche. They actually don't have any competitors on Amazon in selling Craftsman boots. And I'm not sure what the margin is on them, but you have to assume that you sell a couple pairs of boots and it probably covers that $49. Also fulfilled by, right, they also have the supply chain capabilities. So pretty interesting from their perspective. From RM Williams' perspective, not the greatest, right? They're losing, there's a real risk of brand dilution. But that said, from a consumer perspective, you've actually got two interesting offers. You've got one where you pay a lower price, you get it delivered, but it's a limited selection. You get the other, full customization, you get the exact color, fit, etc. that you want, you pay a bit more. So great, from a consumer perspective, excellent. Has to be, very careful channel pricing strategy that has to be managed now by the likes of RM Williams. Assortment. So one of the things we talked about reviews. So having this broad assortment can be, and this review platform can be quite useful for Australian, call them sellers, right? If you're a strong brand with strong reviews, you are going to come to the top of lists, etc. So your Sony televisions actually gets very, very high reviews. And so if I'm going on, I search for my 40-inch television, I look for what has the highest ratings, Sony's going to come up. Now the risk is if consumers don't value that, right? If it's a commoditized product, actually the risk is you just get priced. They go, well, actually 40 inches, if it's 40 inches, that's all I care about. And I'll go for the $299 one from Kogan, thank you very much. So again, risk, but also opportunity. Back to my wardrobe, bonds, don't worry, it's socks. We're looking again, so RM Williams was an interesting example, and we say, oh, interesting, what about bonds? So now, just looking through, oh yeah, you can get bonds on Amazon, oh, fantastic. Offered on Prime, 4 pairs of men's training socks, $7.45. That's interesting, that seems very reasonable. Free delivery, right? I can do a $7.45 transaction. I'm a Prime member, paid $4.99 for it a month. I can get that delivered in 2 days. Single basket of $7.45. Kind of interesting. Going to the Bonds website, $17.99 for the same socks. Exact same SKU, same description, same everything. Free delivery with a basket over $49. So now, obviously, socks are a reasonably good gross margin product. However, is that so there is a cost, a COGS level that strategy makes sense. I don't know whether that is actually the COGS of those socks. So the importance here is again managing that channel issue and pricing issue. Somebody who I think is more obviously doing a good job of that, Huggies Nappies, Kimberly-Clark, great offer for a SKU that you cannot buy anywhere else. I believe it's like a month of nappies that you get for a very reasonable price. I believe it's in store. It's either $33 or $36 for 44 nappies, depending on the size. My kids keep growing. Whereas, the SKU that's offered in Kohl's and Woolworths actually you can't get on Amazon, right? And so you get rid of that. You have a deliberate strategy of managing channel conflict, and that's done quite well. In fact, when we asked in Sydney from a pricing perspective, what were the SKUs that people bought in Sydney? One guy, nappies, absolutely. That's a great offer. I'm on Prime, they get delivered. It's fantastic.
On the nappies,
yeah.
have you read the reviews on them though?
No, I have not. I have not. I have not.
Yeah,
Are they actually different?
Yeah, I've read them.
Yeah.
I don't have any kids though.
You're a strange man. A passionate retailer.
Yeah, and put it this way, they've definitely taken a cut on quality
Yeah.
for cost.
Yeah.
And the reviews reflect that.
Yeah, interesting. So again, it's fascinating, right? You can go down the rabbit hole. Every single product that you find, particularly those that are branded and sold multiple places, you have the manifestation of a different strategy in each one of these products that you look on. It's for somebody who's passionate about it, it's absolutely fascinating. Good. Another interesting one. So Kogan, surprising. I was quite surprised. Kogan listed on Amazon. Not fulfilled by Amazon, not sold by Amazon. So what they're doing is simply using Amazon as customer acquisition. And so again, they get access to the 11 million visits. I type in a 40-inch television. It comes up with Sony, $600, $700, $800, $900 for my television. Great reviews. Or I get something a third the price. Not sure on the relative reviews, but that again, they're present to all of those eyeballs, which is actually a massive cost, obviously in the e-commerce world. Interestingly, so looking at pricing, free delivery on Amazon, free delivery $299 shipped by Kogan. Going to the Kogan website for my address, etc., came out to the exact same product. So in this case, same SKU, same description, $307 delivered. So again, that's obviously a very deliberate strategy around customer acquisition. And so as you can see, there's quite different ways. So I guess to your point, right? You need this has to be each channel, and we think about Amazon Marketplace as a channel. It has to have a purpose, and it's not going to be the same as the bricks and mortar channel or the branded e-commerce channel. And our view is that some retailers and some brands are doing a better job at managing that channel and the channel conflict than others. Good. Well, this is me.
All right, so customer target segment specialist. So I talked a little bit about IKEA. Another example is T2. You could argue they've got a bit of a product specialist as well, but just for this specific example, let's talk about them as a customer target specialist. So they're a Melbourne startup, started in 1996 and then acquired by Unilever in 2013. They focus very heavily on the millennial customer target, and that is obviously a growth category as well as increasing spend, and will be able to grow with T2 over the years. They are very deliberate so far as their brand, their internal culture within the organisation. They leverage their bricks and mortar stores very heavily to really reinforce the consumer or customer experience. So initially, some of the retailers that I've been working with, when this was going to be retail apocalypse, they were looking as e-commerce as a cannibalising of the bricks and mortar sales. However, what's important is T2 have looked at a whole of basket, taken a whole of basket approach. So true omni-channel, so increasing the consumer basket regardless of which is the channel of acquisition or purchase. So they really leverage their bricks and mortar stores very effectively to give the consumers a very strong experience about what expanding the consumption of tea beyond just purely ritualistic experiences. So making it part of every day with teaware, new flavours. Every time they open up a new store, they release a new blend. So when they opened up in New York, I think there's a New York breakfast tea, etc. So they are expanding globally. They are well and truly playing in Amazon's territories globally, in US, in UK, etc. And their offering is very different. So they also, from a marketing strategy perspective, their target is the millennial group. And so they form partnerships with magazines, etc., offering gift bags to give millennials an opportunity to try and experience the T2 brand. So really interesting strategy. They're not on sale now through Amazon. I hope that they won't be. They are being very deliberate as to how they maintain their end-to-end customer experience and their brand and marketing to be able to maintain customer stickiness beyond just purely price plays.
Good. So the final example we wanted to give, we always like to give an international example, is Coolblue. So Coolblue is a Dutch retailer. They're very much a product category specialist, electronics and white goods primarily. And so what they do is, they look at covering good, better, best. So they've got a full range, and they have both through their e-commerce offer as well as their bricks and mortar offer built a very trusted and kind of specialist recommendation model. And so, be it whether you go onto their e-commerce site and there's very good guided, what's the right dishwasher for you, but also similar to that in store, the people are, the sales associates in store are highly knowledgeable, highly specialist category experts. So the idea here is this isn't about flogging televisions or dishwashers, etc., but it's about helping the consumer to find the right product for them. Interestingly, I think a good example, I talked about this in Sydney, a good example or a kind of example counterexample here is in terms of leveraging bricks and mortar and actually having a really differentiated offer. Is if you look at toy stores. So I've got kids. I spend many weekends, kids sport, go find a birthday gift for random child that I've been invited to the birthday party for, and wrap a present and go to birthday party, and rinse, repeat. And so you compare Toys R Us and kids stuff, right? Toys R Us. No what? Yeah, well, that's right. This is exactly, and why? Why, right? You go in, dentist level lighting, big expensive store, disinterested high school salespeople, not, kids running around playing with toys. It's not a great place from a parent's perspective. Different kid stuff, small, very interested, engaged sales staff. Often, it's amazing the recommendations I get from them, and they're very, very engaged. Wrap your gifts for you, so it's very easy. The standard Saturday at the Knive household: swing by, kid stuff, pick up a present, get it wrapped, go get a coffee, go to the birthday party. That is that's the standard, right? And so this is an offer that is very targeted. It's very targeted both from a product perspective and from a customer segment perspective, and it is real consumer value add. It's not buying cheap stuff and putting it on shelves. It's absolutely not that. So this is and Coolblue is the same, right? This is adding value to the consumer through specialist knowledge and through the trust that they engender. From a marketing perspective, this is an interesting differentiator, right, with Amazon, right? This kind of authentic and personal. They use their sales associates in their marketing ads, and so whereas and we'll talk a little bit about this. Amazon is great at serving up algorithm-generated recommendations, but those algorithm-generated recommendations are outputs of a bunch of inputs around, your demographic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they're kind of backwards looking. This sort of engagement, this sort of personal engagement, is very different, right? It actually influences your choices. And so actually as a driver, it influences forward behavior. And so that focus is, and that, I guess, differentiated offer and positioning has a real, is very different from what Amazon is capable of or interested in providing. And so I guess that gets us to the, the final page, which is, what are the things that are inherent in Amazon and other marketplace platform players? What are the things that are inherent in their business model that are actually are advantageous for Australian retailers to take advantage of? We talked a lot about customer experience. So, the Amazon, that platform experience is by definition homogeneous, right? It's the same regardless of whether you're buying a camera, nappies, or a tent. It is online only for the most part, certainly in Australia. Potential measures for Australian retailers, right? Creating, and this can be e-commerce only or e-commerce and bricks and mortar, but creating that curated and compelling content, great product descriptions, great videos, great guides, etc. on your e-commerce site. In store, being very, having those specialist capabilities and special knowledge that actually engenders trust. And leveraging that bricks and mortar network, right? Amazon doesn't have that. And so using that for customer acquisition, using it for customer engagement. Assortment, important. So at the moment, assortment is an opportunity. We expect that's going to go away, right? We expect that that's going to go away fairly quickly in terms of the breadth. But again, that's a bit of that is an advantage or an opportunity for Australian retailers, particularly around creating either customized or private label branded product. Provided you get your channel strategy right and make sure that it doesn't just pop up for half the price on Amazon, it's a very, very, very effective way to compete and differentiate. Pricing, again, I think we talked about this a lot, but just the important where the marketplace, as all markets, is going to drive towards efficiency and drive towards the lowest price. For Australian retailers, very important to be clear about that channel strategy and maintain, and be very deliberate about it. And look at some of these other examples as ways to think about it, ways to do it, and ways not to. And then we talked a little bit about marketing, right? Differentiating via personal engagement is important. So good. So that's what we've got for the presentation. I think just a few predictions for going ahead. So what are we going to be talking about in 12 months' time? So we think, like we talked about the DC network. That distribution is actually, we're going to go from being very metro focused, those next day offers, same day offers, being metro only. We think in 12 months' time, we're going to be talking about regional, right? We're going to be talking about what's the offer in Newcastle, what's the offer in Ballarat. We're going to be talking about pushing farther out, because those are really and you see it in the U.S., you see it in Canada. Those are huge buyers, and because it actually provides them access to a range that they it's a big part of the country. It provides them access to a range that they can't get. And requires travel, days travel, etc. So we think that's a really important one. We also think the food. I mean, is going to be whereas everybody was worried 12 months ago, oh, it's going to be big bang. Everybody's going to be doing their grocery shopping on Amazon, etc. Well, no, of course that was never going to happen. The infrastructure wasn't there for it. However, we see that infrastructure is coming online very quickly, driven initially through some of these meal subscription services. That's pushing the development of the infrastructure. That's quickly going to turn into grocery. Whether that's 20%, etc., but not sure. But we know that that's going to be, and expect that that's going to be a big topic of conversation. As we've kind of said, right? The playbook is those are the next few cabs off the rank. So, good. So I think that's it. Any questions?
Do you
Yeah.
have, I think your chart before said, took Amazon 20 years, let's say, to get 44% of the e-com dollar in the States.
Yes.
Do you guys have a prediction of what you think it's going to be in Australia in 5, 10 years?
Well, yeah, it's very, very hard to say 5, 10 years. Look, we know right now, what is it, about 15% e-commerce retail in the US. It's actually more than that in a number of countries. There's really no reason that Australia shouldn't be at that level. I think it's about 9 or 10 right now. And then the question is Australia going to be like the US, where Amazon is dominant? Or is it going to be more like France, where you had existing players that got a head start? And my sense is actually that it's going to be the latter. Because if everybody was saying, what's going to, we get these questions like, are Australian retailers going to be able to survive? And it's like, of course they're going to be able to, but they have to do things differently. And I think what we're seeing is Australian retailers are doing things differently. And so given that, my expectation is it's not going to be the apocalypse and that dominant scenario, but it's going to be competitive. That's great for Australian consumers. It's fantastic for Australian consumers. I made the comment the other day that this is the second best time for Australian consumers. The best time was when the dollar was at $1.10. That was a bit fleeting. We all wished for that again. But we feel like this is going to be a lot more sustainable. Yeah?
What do you see as Amazon's appetite to get involved in products that don't require physical distribution networks like banking and that type of thing?
Yeah, so so banking, this is my personal view. Banking is an interesting one. Financial services is an interesting one where trust is actually very, very important. Actually, I think in many ways, Australian retailers already have more trust than Amazon does. It doesn't mean that Amazon can't do it. They always say they're interested, but these tech companies are also, kind of notorious for saying that they're going to, do all manner of things. So these are kind of test balloons that come out. They could, absolutely. But I think needs to be more well established in Australia before you go there. They've got some very obvious wins that are scalable from other offers and other areas. I mean, Amazon, their streaming offer. I mean, that's just plug and play. That's very straightforward to bring across in terms of a non-product offer, non-physical product offer. I mean, that's going to go first. To get through all the regulatory hurdles, et cetera, it seems like in the order, if you do a prioritization, I can't see how that fits at the top just yet.
Was there someone else? Just one question on the Alexa.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Alexa? Do you think the adoption will be really fast here in Australia, or do you think it'll be a bit of a laggard?
I don't know. I'd ask others. I don't trust the thing. Yeah. That's my plain answer. I don't know. Anybody else?
I don't have a very firm view on that, but just Frank.
If you want to have just an observation, I think that it's a product led. It's so far ahead of all the others that I don't see why it wouldn't get adopted in Australia. I've been salting them among all of my friends, and they're deliriously happy.
Yeah, I want to.
I was actually at a presentation by one of the heads of the Amazon Web Services, and just from a gender equality perspective, he actually got asked a question: if we're trying to move away from female stereotypes, why did Alexa have a female name? And he actually had no response to that, which is really quite fascinating. But apparently you are actually able to change the name and different voice, so you can. Yeah. Just thought I'd add that little snippet of information. Any other questions?
Yeah, one at the back.
In terms of pricing, are you beginning to see evidence of entrenched Australian premium for retail? The Australian retailers globally, for all of the time, has been able to generate much better margins
Well, you've. I think you had a stat on
Yeah,
price compression, didn't you?
Stats. So there has been, since Amazon's launch, there has been some noticeable, sorry, I'll move so I can see, price compression in the categories that they have, you know, according to their playbook. So sporting goods, electronics, etc. So the price compression between 10 and 14%. So that has been noticeable, and obviously, you know, some consumers are seeing that so far as their reasons for purchasing through Amazon. Obviously, grocery, actually, there's been some price increase, so that hasn't, obviously, they haven't launched that aspect of their offer yet, but there has absolutely been some noticeable price compression. And as the Amazon algorithms continue to evolve and the range expands, we expect that will continue in the consumer's favour. Does that answer your question?
Is that, I don't know if that's consistent with what other folks are seeing.
So just tagging along the price question, are you seeing any price compression in the commercial real estate market? Because I think in the US as well, it went through a phase where, you know, stores were closing and online shopping was increased. Do you see anything of that coming here?
I haven't looked at it. I don't have a good answer. Wouldn't be surprising, but yeah, I don't have an answer. Sorry. Yeah. Anybody?
No, I haven't. I mean, you know, I'd be really interested to hear the perspective of other retailers here, but I think that the retailers that are actually acknowledging, that do have bricks and mortar and acknowledging that Amazon is here and are starting to leverage their bricks and mortar, I haven't seen, you know, a lot of store closures necessarily. Maybe in some of the retailers that are struggling, potentially, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen that dynamic.
But I think the broader point, as we talked about in terms of strategic choices for Australian retailers, is we still think bricks and mortar is important for some strategies, many strategies, and it is a differentiator.
And just building on that, what we're seeing is with some of our clients, they're actually leveraging their bricks and mortar to help with their supply chain. So last mile delivery, establishing grey stores, etc. So they can actually use some of the ride share options for that last mile. So it's going to be interesting. Personally, from a supply chain perspective, I think the next 12 months are going to be absolutely fascinating to see how the industry and how the logistics support network is going to expand over the next 12 months. So yeah.
Good.
Your analysis didn't include organisations like Alibaba. Do you see them playing a role, given that there's current trade negotiations between China and the US, given our proximity to Asia? Do you see them as being a sleeper in this space at all?
Well, look, I think there's it's kind of a big, a broader question, right? Which is, why is Amazon in Australia in the first place? Because, you know, overall, it is a pretty expensive operation to set up for you know, a market that's, you know, the size of Southern California, and one answer, potential answer to that, is to keep the likes of Alibaba and JD out of an English-speaking market. So, you know, I don't know whether that's true or not, but it's, yeah, I think as we've seen in that space, I mean, you know, the big Asian companies of all sorts are looking to expand beyond their borders, and so it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that.